to order. The meeting is being conducted at the District Educational Service Center, and it is a hybrid video conferencing meeting. The meeting is also being live streamed by the county channel. The participants for the school district are myself, the board chair, Christina Bois, the board vice chair, Mr. Melvin Campbell, the board finance committee chair, Richard Geyer, the superintendent, Dr. Frank Rodriguez, the CFO, Ms. Tanya Crosby. For Beaufort County Council, we have the chairman, Mr. Joseph Passament, the vice chairman, Mr. Paul Somerville, the finance committee chair, Mr. Mark Lossman, the interim county administrator, Mr. Eric Greenway, and the CFO, Ms. Whitney Richland. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and our flag is behind us over here.
Kathy Robang.
Join the meeting.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. We'll have a moment of silence. All right, we now need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move, Madam Chair, that we approve this agenda for this joint meeting between County Council and Beaufort Board of Education.
I will second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I didn't want you to think I was crashing the meeting. Joe told me to be here.
He is our liaison to the school board.
So the first is the fiscal autonomy, and we discussed this to some degree at our last meeting, which was a whole year ago. And I'm going to let Mr. Geyer give the background of it on it.
What you have here is a memorandum concerning fiscal autonomy developed by the attorney's name,
Dick Halligan.
Halligan. And basically it lays out the history of how our present fiscal approval is done. And when you go through it, you can see that fundamentally it comes from a 1968 county ordinance. It said the county board of education shall certify to the county council the proposed budget for the operations of the schools in the county for the next fiscal year, with anticipated revenue from all sources and a recommended property tax levy. The county council shall then from reports prepare a budget for the operation of the county for the ensuing year that includes the county school system. And it must receive 5 affirmative, that's back when we had fewer council members. At least 5 affirmative votes of the members of the council before becoming effective, provided, however, that should such budget require an increase in the tax millage over that levy for the preceding year. So if there's no increase in tax millage, there's no need for that certification to happen. But if you go through there, you'll see that in 1986, they had the Home Rule Act. Mm-hmm. It was actually in 1975. Yeah. In 1975, the Home Rule Act and the Beaufort County government was reconstituted as a council administrative government. In 86, the South Carolina Attorney General's office wrote the precise legal authority of the county council over school tax millage cannot be easily determined because of conflicting formal legislation. A number of provisions in the local laws for Beaufort County that makes difficult the determination of which public bodies in Beaufort County have millage and budgetary authority as to school matters and to the extent of that authority. The opinion recommended a legislative solution. On 3rd of 2003, the Attorney General's office affirmed that school districts are political subdivisions of the state itself and completely separate and distinct entities from counties, and that county government involved with the school district is strictly limited by the limits of home rule. The home rule does not alter the separate identity of school districts in South Carolina. So it says here the evaluation of the budget process, the board no longer submitted its budget to the legislative delegation. Instead, the board certified its budget to the council for incorporation into the overall Beaufort County budget. Now, what certification means is not spelled out. I have an opinion of what it means, but I can't find a legal statement of what that is. And then here's a opinion. Even if the 1968 language in the ordinance is still in effect, nothing in the law clearly and unequivocally gives the Beaufort County Council any authority to change the school budget. The 1968 law merely provides for the board to certify the school budget and recommend tax levy. Now, okay, the proper judicial construction of the language certify in light of a Charleston case. At Charleston, they had a legal case to determine what that was, is that local law provides no authority for the council to modify the board's certified budget, especially in light of the repeal of the act authorizing line item authority. However, the 1968 law provides that nothing in this act shall be construed to abridge or affect the powers of any political subdivision within the county. However, in South Carolina, a school district is a creature of the state. It is a political subdivision. Because the Beaufort County School District is a political subdivision, the 1968 local law clearly limits the council's authority. Supreme Court, State Supreme Court recently repeated this message. Public education is a state function. Public education is not the duty of counties, but of the General Assembly. So you can read all through this, you get down to the conclusion. The simplest route to a correct result is the Beaufort County Board of Education to certify its budget to the county council, and the county council, and for the county council to leave that budget intact as received, so that the council is not violating state constitution. Council made it clear, can make it clear that the Board of Education is solely responsible for the budget, just as the Board of Education is solely responsible for the educational results of the budget. Here's the issue. We've hired a superintendent who has, one of the reasons we hired him is because he has turned around school districts. And so now, after, we wanted to get this started before, is to tell us what you need, Frank, and we'll get the resources for you. Well, with COVID hitting, kind of all that went up in the air, and Frank's been trying just to keep the wheels on and deal with all the things that have been going on with masking, unmasking, virtual, live, hybrid, and so on. But now we're looking at going back to normal. And he has given us a budget and says, this is the resource that I need to meet the goals that you have set in the board strategic plan. And specifically, the main goal is to reduce and eventually eliminate the achievement gap. And the achievement gap is the academic achievement gap between our minority students and our white students. And it is significant, and it has gotten worse. as a result of the COVID pandemic. So if we're going to hold Frank accountable, we have to give him the resources that he requires. And the resources, we've looked at the budget, we've gone through it, and we're going to require a millage increase. And that millage increase is at the limit of what we can increase by state law. It's no more and no less. Now, you've heard that we're going to get some money from the feds to take care of the impact of COVID. You have to understand that money is very specific of what it can be spent for. And it cannot be spent for recurring costs. So if we hire some people to tutor or run after-school programs or do summer schools, these are not people that are going to keep on, because after that COVID money is spent, it's gone. Now, $50 million sounds like a lot of money, and that's what we're looking at for the final. We've already gotten how many million?
7 million.
And it is very specific what we can spend. We can spend only so much on instruction. We can spend so much on facilities, clean air, so on, technology. We can't go beyond what the feds say we can spend, and then we have to provide them a bill. We have to spend it up front, provide them the bill, and then they will reimburse us if they look at it and approve of how we spent that money. So obviously, we are very constrained, and this does not allow us to take care of some of the other things we have found since Frank's been here. We had an efficiency study. We hired a firm to come in and look at our staffing, and they found some problems that we knew operationally that we had, but these folks told us, for example, he said, your HR is completely understaffed for the number of employees that you have. And when you take risks in HR, you take significant risks. They said, in the past, you got rid of student services, and you put student services amongst other departments. And right now, student services is very, very key. That's the counselors, that's the social workers, and all those folks that help us deal with the psychological effects that we've had for pandemic and the effects that we have for that cause the achievement gap. So there's a number of items in the budget to take care of that. Lastly, and importantly, is we have not been paying our teachers what we should. I think it was 10 years ago, the HR briefed us that Beaufort County had the second highest teacher salaries in the state. Today, we're in the bottom third of the state. We have not kept up. We had a step increase that we did not fund in 2012. So we're still trying to catch up from that. And here's the problem that we're facing. Right now, teachers have been worked to death, trying to do hybrid, trying to do virtual, trying to bring kids back into class, trying to catch up, trying to contact parents. Teacher retention is going to be a problem. Teacher recruitment is going to be a problem. More and more people are saying, I'm not going to be a teacher. And so recruiting and retaining teachers, unfortunately, takes salary and other things, and professional development, and professional development costs money. So if we're going to cope with the effects of this pandemic, if we are going to be competitive to bring in quality teachers, we are going to have to adjust. And our budget has a pay up that's missing step increase, plus an extra $1,000 in base pay. Obviously, cost of living. Now, of course, we get state funding as well. And you know from Act 388, I believe the state budget for each student is what, 2,400 and
2,500.
2,500 and some change, right?
The
$2,500
latest
per
proposal
student.
is $2,516.
$2,518 per student. That's what the state says. What we get is what?
600, around 600.
$600. And that's Act 388. That's because we're rich. So the state, even when they give us state mandates for step increases and salary increases, we don't get all the money for those state mandates. We have to pay it out of operational funds. So we have an issue with autonomy, we have an issue with budget, and we obviously are going to be asking for more money. And we'd like to discuss on how we can solve this issue. It could be as simple as taking a 1968 county ordinance and bringing it up to date to state law. It could be having to go to the state legislature and get a special act, but that takes time. And of course, there's other issues that we could do if we had to do that to take care of it. So that's kind of an opening. Dr. Frank, you have anything else you want to mention?
I think I would add that, you know, your veteran teachers are also, you know, they're more experienced educators as well. And within our system, the step increases end at 24, right? And so one of the things we'd like to do in this budget is to increase a year on that to 25, and so on and so forth. So that's just another piece with respect to our employees. But I think we've been through an unprecedented year. I think in every aspect of society, but education is certainly included in that, you know. And I think, you know, it requires an unprecedented response from us to try to improve outcomes for kids.
One thing that really hit us, we recently got some test scores about our pre-K. Frank, did you tell them about that?
Yeah, sure. So our kindergarten students take an assessment, right? That tells us readiness for kindergarten. Okay. What we find is that 82.7% of our kindergartners are not ready for kindergarten. All right. So looking to expand early childhood programming is, I think, an important component in order to help get more students involved in pre-K and then kindergarten. So I think those are really relevant factors that.
You know, kindergarten is not mandated.
Yeah.
First grade is. We lost enrollment in kindergarten. Parents elected to say, well, rather than go through hybrid, rather than go through virtual, you know, you can imagine kindergarten virtually is a challenge. And many parents elected to just keep the kids at home. So that means they're coming in expecting to go to first grade without having kindergarten. And already we know 82% aren't ready for kindergarten. So that's a challenge.
How many what's your percentage of students that are in the pre-K program for the county?
Currently, I'd have to get that for you.
Is it over the 18%?
But
the 82% that's not ready for kindergarten
82
aren't ready for kindergarten.
Yeah, 82.7%.
So I'm just asking what your percentage of kids are in the pre-K program.
You good?
It's okay.
The way they qualify for pre-K is they have to be basically below the 50th percentile. So,
But just because they qualify doesn't mean that they're actually sent, right? Either.
so
Right, under the No Child Left Behind Act, you have to survey your 3-year-olds to see who has special needs. So that's one group. And then you have other pre-K programs that the school district can or cannot do, or will not do to get kids ready for kindergarten.
Yeah, I was just looking for the number of kids that are in Beaufort County that are in the pre-K program. How many kids are in there
Okay.
as a percentage?
We have pre-K kids in our schools now, but of course, there's a lot of pre-K programs by churches and
I think
Oh,
so.
sure.
private.
Yeah, I
Sure.
think so.
So
when-
we don't have
Right.
data on.
And it is a struggle for your kindergarten teachers and your administration to determine, we all start kindergarten. You went to the Catholic school.
Right.
He went to a synagogue.
Right.
He went to a Montessori.
Right.
And now we got to find out where they are. Who knows how to tie their shoes? Who knows the alphabet? Who knows how to write their name?
That's right. Those are things that illustrate part of the problem. A greater need for our county is that we have to educate all the people in our county to be able to deal with our employment issues.
Yep.
And for years we've had, pockets of good education and pockets of not so good education, and we not even rated in the top tier in the state in terms of education, much to say the country, and we intend to have a world-class educational system here so that we can attract world-class individuals. And that's not being done. And the part of the systemic problem is early childhood education. And like you mentioned, all these pockets, we don't have a grasp on who is being educated and how at an early age. So we want to extend our early childhood program so that we do have those numbers at our fingertips.
You can't see behind the mask my smirking and smiling and dismay and chagrin and everything, because this is the fight I had for 46 years in education. So I know fully well, you set the bar for your superintendent, who is your educational leader. He is the one who's going to tell you, this is exactly what I need to run the school system that you want. And it is up to everybody on county council, on the school board, to understand if this is what we want, this is what it takes to do it. It's that simple.
Mr. Lawson,
Yes, sir.
the response to your question is that we have 729 students in pre-K. That's 3.4 of total enrollment. So if you look at a particular class of students across the district, right, it would be maybe half, almost half
What's
of
the
a
norm?
grade level, if you understand what I'm saying.
What's the normal kindergarten class each year?
Just about every one of our grade levels are just over 1,400 students,
Okay.
I believe.
Well, and I'll say is if we're talking about the opinion that was written, and if this is an opinion, who'd you say did this for you?
It was Vic Halligan, who he presented it, it's on, I believe, he presented it to the school board in 2004, it's handwritten on there.
Okay, and then the back page, that came from the,
That's from the South Carolina School Board Association, May 2019.
because you look at this and you read this, and obviously it is an opinion and would have to have, our legal counsel look at and give their opinion. If this is the case, it makes it very easy for us, because then we can say raising taxes is all on you guys. Because that's something that we're here to make sure is that we try to keep taxes to a minimum and keep things are spent correctly, and we are doing what's right for the county. So obviously, if this is correct and this is the opinion, then the fact of raising the school board budget, I think I calculated it was probably about a 6.5% increase. That falls back to y'all and what you do and how you operate, and we then would certify it. Otherwise, if it is our responsibility, that's why, we look at trying to keep taxes, and especially for that 6% we keep talking about that gets hammered every year where this comes from, that we try to protect them and try to keep their taxes to a minimum. And even when you read this, it says from the 68 with the anticipated revenue from all sources and the recommended property tax levy. So, just reading through that and looking from the 68 of what's in here. So, when I first read this, I'm a big supporter. I voted last year for tax increase that we had last year, and I want to do the same thing this year. However, again, it's one of those things that we realize we're in a pandemic, like you're saying. So this is money coming from somebody that's going to have to pay for these items.
I can give you you're asking for a 7.6 mil increase for a $200,000 home or rental property. That would mean about a $10 a month increase in tax increase, $10 a month. For a $400,000 home, it's what?
$180 a year.
Yeah, how much a month?
About
It
15.
wasn't very-
$15 a month. That's what a 7.6 mil increase turns out for a $400,000 home that a landlord has to increase rent $15 a month.
And I'm sure this was a struggle for you when you're putting this budget together.
Oh, yeah.
It's not easy, okay? You're serving three masters. The educational leader says, this is what I need. The taxpayers say, I don't want to pay for it, but you damn well better do this. And the county says, we have to weigh in on this. So it is a frustration. I get that. But I'm certainly in support of what you did. Because this is what's necessary. As you said, if we're going to have a world-class educational system, you have to start someplace. And this is the road to doing that. These are our future leaders. These are the young men and women who are going to be out there living in our community, doing the work in our community. We need to have them well-educated, well-versed in society so that they can make the proper decisions.
So do we have any other comments from those present regarding the fiscal autonomy? Because that was our first order of business.
What is it exactly you would like us to do?
Well, it seems like the two groups with representation probably need to, meet and have a discussion about, as Mark pointed out, is this opinion active? The opinion we've received says that really we have the full legal responsibility to develop the budget, approve the budget, and set the tax rate. And that really county council does not have that authority. So I just think it needs to be codified, whether it's in, as Mr. Geyer said, the county ordinance needs to be changed because it's obviously antiquated. And in fact, the Attorney General back in '86 said it's not clear from all that's written, and it would be wise to go get the legislative delegation to pass legislation at the state level to clarify it, and I'd be fine with that. I mean, I think something needs to be done because it's problematic. And year after year, we've had shortfalls in the last 11 years. We've had shortfalls with the revenue of over 13 million, I believe. 13.5 million. I mean, that's a lot, and that's affecting our students' education. It's not something that can just oh, well, we'll make up for it next year. That's not the case. It's not being made up for the next year. And so you're asked, we're entrusted with the children and to educate the children. And that requires money, and it requires good teachers and good academics. And, if we're said, well, you have to do, it's your responsibility to educate the children, but you have to do with less this year, and less this year, and less the next year, it's not possible to do. I mean, it's impossible.
Right.
So. go ahead,
Well, I
Steve.
probably have the longest history on this issue, so let me take just a minute and walk through. I've actually printed something out of my, I had it on file, so y'all can have a copy of it. But I think everything you cited in there, I don't disagree with from my recollection of what happened over time. I think the only issue is whether or not the county council has to approve the tax rate. With that exception, the school board certifies. In the past, all the county council could do was vote it up or down, could not line change anything, along the way. So I think that's the issue. Now, I came on the school board 18 years ago, and so I can actually see what happened over 20 years. And if you go back, what happened about the time I came on is the county council would routinely reject the school board budget. That then led to an ordinance called the Maintenance of Local Effort that would kick in, that would say they were then entitled to an increase equal to enrollment increase and inflation. That happened for a couple years. And so, but during that period of time, the EFA funding was falling because of the formula, because we're a tax-paying ability. So we were actually in a fairly deep hole. Tanya will remember this pretty well.
Zero.
Yeah, we actually were at one point where we thought maybe they were going to send us an invoice because the calculation was negative. And it's picked back up, I know, a little bit. And one year we got a proviso for 7 or 8 million, I think, to bridge the gap. And then I went to county council because I was still on the school board at that point in time. And we had a discussion that said, we've got to fix this problem. And I believe we put forward a $16 million increase, which at that time was, 10, 12%, whatever it was. And if you add it up over time, it's $250 million. And so then at that point, I ended up going on the county council and through finance, and always involved in the budget. The best of my knowledge, with one exception, I don't think we ever denied the school board anything. I could stand corrected, but I believe we basically agreed with everything. In fact, a couple of cases, we actually suggested that you increase your budget. One was getting on with the computers and accelerating those faster. And we were the ones who suggested, tell us what it is that you need for the school teachers. And that was $5,000, and I think that's what you still have in effect. And we actually put a step in for 1 or 2 years, and then I think later on you all got rid of it. But it always seemed to me there was some logic to continuing the step. The only place I remember where we didn't vote is what you asked for, was I think in 19, and you had a sizable increase. And so we took it in 2 steps. One was to approve an amount, which we did in the spring, to go up to the maximum of 388, including the carry forward. And then said, come back in the fall if you think you still need more. So you all did. That fell 1 vote short because it needed a super majority to do it. And the question was, it basically came back to how much money was in the reserve at that point in time. So that's kind of my recollection. Now, I've thought about this over time, and back about 7 or 8 years ago, I actually went to the delegation and said, I think there's a strong argument for physical autonomy for the school district. My thought process was that it would actually encourage more people to consider running for the school board, because you would be setting their taxes, because they have this false impression that we're, guarding the hen house. But in any event, they turned it down flatly. So as I've thought about it since, I developed this little piece, and I'll just run through it real quickly. But it does seem to me that a way to, well, in fact, if you look at the state, about 1/3 of the counties have full fiscal autonomy. About 1/3 have the county council has to approve, and about a third have limited, and I guess there's some versions on the back, but, and there are different ones as to how you do it. So it seems to me that the logical way to do it would be to authorize you all to set your own budget, set the tax rate, whatever it is, up to the cap of 388. Okay? Which I think we've historically done. And then to actually continue the 388 process, it says if you're going to break the cap, then the county council would be the logical body to have to hear what it is that you're saying, and then if we agree to set the set the supermajority to approve that. Now, it's kind of funny in a way because Act 388 has this statutory ceiling that you can go up to, but the old maintenance of the local effort, it's as close as I can tell, is still in effect. The two are almost the same, other than one's based on enrollment, one's based on population. In fact, you could be upside down. You could actually have the floor being greater than the ceiling based on what happened with the enrollment. So it seems to me that would be an avenue going forward. I don't think you're going to have a lot of success with the delegation, but I would think that council could consider, if you wanted to go down that path, of asking the delegation to approve that type of an approach, which would essentially say the only place that you would have to come to us for approval would be where you exceed the cap on the 388, which I think you have to do anyway.
We do.
Which you do anyway. So I think that might give you everything you want in that regard, if you wanted to go down that path. Now the second page, this was something from Phyllis White years ago, but you can see at the very top there, those are the conditions under which the 388 can be broken. I think there's 5 of them there, but clearly the kind of thing you're talking about now, like item 2 is the catastrophic event,
Right.
Happened. So
Yeah.
we're certainly in the place to do that for you if you want us to. And I think for this year, I would think that might be the best approach, because I don't know you can get anything through the legislature, and I think the legislature might disagree that the county can unilaterally change that. I haven't read the opinion, but I would guess that that's where they would come out. So for what it's worth, that would seem to me a path forward that might get what you all want, get you through this year, and then and maybe get the first step toward fiscal autonomy.
Yeah. Tanya, do you have any comment?
No, I do recall I think we used the surcharge request twice over a history of about 20 years. And one
Okay.
was a court order, certainly, many years ago. And then the other request was the deficiency in the 2019 fiscal year. So in 2 cases, I think that, so it's not something that happens regularly. It is, but has occurred, a few times over the years. So just from a historical perspective.
If you want to go down this path, I think I certainly have a good relationship with the delegation. Would be happy to pursue it, but obviously we'd be happy with your blessings and the council's blessing.
Yeah, I agree with Stu. I think going after the legislative delegation right now is a road to nowhere. It'll bog down, I think, on day 1, and that'll be the end of it. That's my opinion. That's all it is. You got, what's your reach back? How much reach back do you have left? Any?
Yes.
4.4 mils is the look back over the 2 years, and then the current capped amount is 3.2. So the combination of those
So there's your 7.7.
is 7.6.
Okay.
So you meet all the statutory requirements
Yeah.
within the
Sure.
guidelines?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're really talking about 2 things. Number 1 is
Yeah.
to get through this year.
Exactly.
And number
Exactly.
2 is what the long term is going to look like for autonomous.
Yeah.
And, there's 2 different discussions. If you want to attack the autonomy before we take up the budget, that's going to get difficult.
Right.
I think, I'm just talking out loud. Seems to me the logical thing to do would be to take, as long as you're within the 388 guidelines, and it sounds like you are, then get that approved and then attack the long-term autonomy issue. I've read and reread and reread this opinion, and it looks like the opinion seems to take the 1968 statute and say that the home rule just overruled it, trumped it, deleted it. And that, I mean, that argument sounds to me. So if you assume that that's the case, then we're looking at we're not going to be interested in anything that happened before 1975. So then of course the author, I can't remember, who's your friend?
It's Vic Halligan.
Oh, Halligan, yeah. I mean, Halligan says, well, since it all begins with the Home Rule Act, there's nothing subsequent to that that really takes away the authority from the school district to set their own millage. So, I mean, there's your argument. Deal with that, just take that argument on its face and say, well, at that point, then the council, we'd have to get a legal opinion and say, can we do that or not? Because we can't move forward without a legal opinion. If our legal opinion looked like that, then I guess we could vote on it and say, hey, you know, since 1975, we've been doing something we don't have to do, and so we can right the ship by simply raising our hands and saying, well, we're not going to do it anymore because we don't have the statutory authority to do it. I don't know what the sense of the body is. I suspect we're going to have some council members who are going to want to cling tenaciously to this authority. I don't know that for a fact. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't have any reason to think that that's a majority of council, but it could be. Personally, I've always felt that the school district should have autonomy for the basic reasons that you all are elected just like we are to do a job and spend money. You spend more money than we do. And so why should we be responsible for decisions that you make? We've never really, I mean, really, not in my lifetime, maybe before Stu and I came on in 2008.
After the dark ages.
We've never really taken the school district proposed budget back much, if at all. I don't remember. So as a practical matter, you know, it's you had essentially autonomy, but you still had to do the Mother May, I think. I guess I'm inclined to say that, for my opinion, for what it's worth, it's bring forward the 2021-22 proposal with the clawback, or what do you call it, clawback or reach back?
Look back.
Look back. Oh, I call it clawback. And I would think that would pass, but if it doesn't, then we'll go back to the drawing board. But let me make another comment. This whole business about paying the teachers adequately, I absolutely agree with that. But I just don't agree that the teachers are not adequately paid. I think anybody who's on a salary or an hourly rate right now is headed off a cliff, just because of the cost. I mean, it's a double whammy. First of all, is what's going on in the national economy, and then secondly, and probably more painfully, is what's going on in the Beaufort County economy. So, I mean,
We have added classified and certified staff both.
I'm sorry?
We have added all employees.
Yeah.
With a.
Well, I'm thinking about the people that wait tables in Hilton Head, and the people who change sheets in northern Beaufort County, and the people who do everything.
Right.
You know, unless you have assets right now or equities, you're in trouble. It's just a question of to what degree you're in trouble.
You're right. And Paul, some of those teachers some of those people who wait tables are teachers.
Teachers.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because they have to.
Yeah.
You know? Oh. I agree with you.
Very familiar with that.
I agree with you.
But I mean, if the council can quietly begin, can begin to get a legal opinion on whether or not they agree with this post-1975 interpretation of the state statute, then that would be helpful to us, and then we can deal with it. Right now, all we've got is your attorneys, obviously, we're not disrespecting, but and they can look at it, and then, I mean, this is up to Joe to put it on the agenda or not.
Yes, and we will do that. You know, fiscal autonomy is fiscal autonomy. Like I said, I spent 46 years in education. I'm very familiar how a school board builds its budget, why they build it that way, and who they're responsible to. Each state does it differently. I had to beg the citizens of the school districts that I oversaw to pass the budget. And when it did, we were fine. When it didn't, I had to now go to the town, who I had to explain the budget to. And I had to start off by saying, okay, please put the paper this way. You're upside down, because they had absolutely no idea what I was talking about, much less fund accounting, and this is a federally mandated program, so on and so forth. So I certainly feel your pain. I don't think we're going to be able to do the fiscal autonomy in the next couple of weeks before your budget has to be certified. So we easily can explain to council the proper way that you are doing your budget. You are within the law, and the law says you are allowed to do this. And we go on from there.
And I think on the opinion, we may want to jointly just go to get an attorney general's opinion. Say, look, that's the quickest and simplest and most binding way to do it in South Carolina.
I think people are beginning to panic because they're starting to look at their individual situation and try to anticipate what it's going to look like in a month or 2 months down the road, and they're starting to get really nervous. So raising the millage, the operations millage, is going to be the least of their worries. Their worries are going to be what's going to happen to me. I'm making $12 an hour, $13 or whatever I'm making, and that's not going to get me. That's not going to get me through the next 6 months or year. So if you're simultaneously talking about raising the wages of your entire workforce, and I think, and if the hospitality industry is doing the same thing, and I think they are, then I think it'll just be part and parcel of what's going on in this country. It's not something unique to Beaufort County School District.
Right. Right.
I mean, you're trying to be part of the solution, not the problem.
Right. You know, and the fact of what you said, you have teachers who teach all day and then go to work at another job to make ends meet.
One other thing that I want to bring up is this chart here. Determining the value of the mill and setting the proper millage rate has really put us in a bind. And you know why. I don't need to explain why that is, but we can't have this happen anymore, because one of the things we're doing is we're borrowing a whole bunch of money. And right now what was the last $80 million interest rate?
It was a fraction of a percent.
Fraction of a percent. That's not going to hold.
No.
And our bond rating is absolutely key. Right now, we are right at where the minimum to keep our AA1 bond rating. But that fund balance that gives us that is not enough to pay our bills from 1st of July to December when the money starts coming in. And you know that.
Well, you always did.
We're like Toys R Us, you know.
did tans.
We get all our money in December and January if tax bills go out on time. So we borrow a TAN every year. And the TAN, what do we pay on interest and fees for this year's TAN?
We had to do 2 of them this year.
Yeah, we did.
I think it was
150,000
150,000 on the 80 million, and I think the net interest cost is probably about 65,000 annually on the $14 million borrowing.
So to get to the point where we have fund balance to not force us to use it at 10 is our ultimate goal that we want to try to do. So that that's interest is a teacher. That's the way I look at it. That's a teacher. And, so when we have this kind of shortfalls, because, we look at the value of the mill at the end of the fiscal year. We know what the millage rate was, and we know what we got in the bank. And that's simple math to get it. That's not the way the millage has been set. The millage has been set based on the tax bills that go out and the assessed value.
And I think additionally, shortfalls like that, it's not just the shortfall that hurts that particular year, but it has a compounding impact on what you're trying to do educationally for kids.
Well, it's the whole educational funding formula.
So setting the value, especially in a reassessment year. Reassessment year has killed us.
Yep.
And if we would have not had these amounts, we would have enough fund balance that we would be able to not have to have a TAN. So I know the process is hard because when you make an estimate of what revenue you get for a specific mill, that's hard business. And there's so many variables, 6% to 4%, businesses come, businesses go. I mean, that's hard business. But we've been awful, when I look at the records and what we've asked for, so we've said that the value of the mill should be looked at and what we got as value of the mill, we've been a lot closer to what it actually turned out to be. And if we had the State Department of Revenue come and tell us, if you get a little bit more, in other words, your millage brings in more than you anticipated, then you just take that to the next year and don't ask for as much. I mean, but if you get short, you just have to suck it up.
Yep.
So that's the frustration that we've had with this budget process. And I know you all have the same issues. So, I'm preaching to the choir. I realize that. But that's just a frustration that we have to try to deal with.
I think once your budget gets approved, assuming we pass it, and you're ready to tackle the autonomy, I think we should touch base with a couple of our legislative delegations just to see. But the question that kept coming through my mind is who's going to push back on this? Who's going to scream and holler about this? And I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, the legislators, some of them might. And it'd be a good idea to test the water, make sure there's not a majority of them. Because if we proceed with that, get a legal opinion, our lawyer says, yeah, that's right, and we say, okay, we'll go along with that, and then the legislative delegation descends on us. We made a strategic.
I think Weston would be the best one for us to jointly talk to privately, because he was chairman and he's well respected in the legislature. He'd be the closest to what was
We
happening.
could talk to Shannon
20 years.
and to Tom.
I've talked to all of them, but I think
Yeah.
Weston would have the best handle on it.
Yeah.
And they might look to him, having been on county council, and where he is.
Okay.
And he has the legislative oversight committee anyway, right there in the House.
So do we have we've really covered the first two agenda items, the autonomy, fiscal autonomy and the 2021, 2022.
Let me just ask a question about the budget is because of COVID, did it cost more, or were there savings since, maybe that's just normal people would ask, and just kind of a general, doesn't even.
There were some savings last year because of COVID, but now, of course, we've got such a great number with learning loss. I mean, this was not good academic for students at all.
On what we're facing, right? We talked about the kindergarten readiness already, right? But what we're facing is the state Department of Education is projecting that statewide, 7 out of 10 children in grades 3 through 8 will not be on grade level. 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
And that academic recovery is not the type of, it's not something you fix in a year. It's not like you go back to normal and you say, hey, we're there. You know, it's going to take a multiple year process to make that academic recovery.
Especially your third graders. If they're
Yes,
not
sir.
on grade level, your remediation is going to be the rest of their educational career.
They take the third grade statistics and figure out how many prison cells they're gonna need.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you know, we've said it time and time again, the first 3 years you teach them to read. Because by third grade, if they're reading at a third grade level, they're going to be successful. Because the rest of their career, they read to learn. If you've lost them at third grade, it's pure and simple catch up. And statistics show several of them aren't even going to finish high school. So, yeah, you've got your work cut out for you, Frank. We understand that. We empathize and sympathize. This is going to be a struggle. We'll be back here next year talking about the remediation programs you need and what they're going to cost.
I think everybody in this room on this side is very supportive of education, has been over a long time. That's not to say we're not going to get a lot of pushback too. Because
And on that side of the room too.
people are hurting. And so we got to
Come
be
over
very
to this
careful.
side. You can be on our side.
What are you saying?
Last year, we saved about $4 million because we weren't heating the rooms and everything like that. But we got about $2 million less in revenue than we were expected to get. So our actual plus was the $2 million that we put in our.
General fund and debt service.
Mhm.
So I'm estimating about 2 million above the budget on the general fund.
And what is the surplus you have percentage-wise and what is recommended by the state?
We have about 16%. Our board policy is 15 to 17%, so we're right in the middle. We're at about 56 days of operations. The state minimum is 30. You're in big trouble if you go below 30.
Okay,
Recommended rate is 60, so we're a little below the 60.
okay.
15 years ago, I think it was 7%.
Was it? Well,
Really?
I'm just saying.
You've convinced us over time to keep bumping it up.
Well, the rating agencies have too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Probably.
State's coming along, state's coming along.
I came up from a state that surplus was 2%. That was it.
Sorry, Christine, I didn't mean to get us off track, so get ahead
Okay,
on.
so ready to move on?
Yeah.
So impact fees, back on June 10th, 2020, I sent a letter to Stu Rodman on behalf of the Board of Education because the board had voted and recommended to Beaufort County Council a school impact fee for dwellings south of the Broad River, which was option 2 in the Fischler Weiss study of December 2019. And it included a $9,535 impact fee for single-family units and $4,508 fees for multifamily units to subsidize new infrastructure needed as a result of property development in southern Beaufort County. And that motion was approved by the board, 10 in favor, no no's, and 1 abstention. So my question is the Board of Education chair and member is, where do we stand with this?
We'll turn that
And what's
over to
happening?
Eric because we've been working on impact fees for a period of time. And it's not just a school impact fee. It is in the entire package of impact fees and how they will affect future development. But I'll let Eric weigh in on
With
that.
regard to the school impact fee, we cannot legally proceed until we have some indication from the municipalities in the southern, south of the Broad area that they're going to sign on to an intergovernmental agreement, because there's some state law, there's some law cases out there, some litigation, and some new ones that basically have said that it's hard to justify including an impact fee for a given area if all the members of that given area are not going to be in a position to collect the fee. So I would recommend that you all as a school board contact the Bluffton leadership, County Hilton Allen leadership, the Hardyville leadership, and say, hey, where's those intergovernmental agreements that the county council gave you all to sign? We've done all of that work. It's in their hands. We're waiting on them to give us some.
For a couple months, isn't it?
I'm sorry, Robin said it's a little hard to hear you since you're away from the
Can you
microphone.
just come up to the table because the microphone's in the middle? Thank you.
So essentially, the answer to the question is that we provided the intergovernmental agreement several months ago, probably back in the fall of 2020, to all the municipalities for not only the school impact fee, but various other impact fees that we're updating or starting, and that would be an EMS fee as well. So we are waiting on those municipalities to respond. Legally, we cannot proceed on with the adoption of particularly the school impact fee because of some court cases and some rulings that have happened in a jurisdiction in Florida that basically says that a jurisdiction cannot impose a school impact fee if all members of the area where the impact fee would be applicable to, collects the fee as well. So we would be on shaky legal ground to adopt that type of fee without all the municipalities doing it. So they have the intergovernmental agreements. That's my understanding. Bluffton took up the discussion of the intergovernmental agreement Monday evening at their meeting. I have not had any communication with them since. Town of Hilton Head Island, I think, has expressed some concern about doing the school impact fee. And Hardyville, we provided those again to them a second time recently, and I haven't heard anything from them. But you all as the school board, county council is kind of taking, the approach with the school impact fee that it's pretty much the school board to push for the adoption of those intergovernmental agreements so that we can proceed on with the adoption of the school impact fee. We've given it first reading by title, but we cannot give it any other readings until we have those intergovernmental agreements.
We had a meeting with the mayor of Bluffton, and that was brought up. And she told us that so far they're on track this year to add 1,000 individual housing permits in Bluffton. 1,000, which is, they haven't had that since I think 2007, 2008, when everything crashed. So, here, that means more schools. These are housing developments that are going to bring in a lot more kids.
And we have two developments getting ready to kick off there. A third that's potentially on the way in that area. They're paying a school capital fee, but they're building houses right and left in there, but they're paying way less than the $9,000. So the faster we get this done, the better off you are going to be. But we can't. It might be a good idea for you all as elected, particularly the school board members that are elected from those areas, to start pressuring those individual elected officials from the municipalities to get this done. The impact fee on Hilton Head Island is going to have a negligible impact because the impact fee is two things about impact fees that people don't realize, particularly as they apply to schools, is if it's redevelopment. So if you're replacing a dwelling with another dwelling, the school impact fee would not apply.
Right.
Now, if they're taking down 10 single-family houses and replacing those with 50 multifamily houses, then they will pay the difference for the 40 new dwelling units and things like that. Second issue is worried about affordable housing. Our county council, and we still plan on doing this, has built in money and has funded a waiver account for affordable housing projects, and we don't see that not occurring again. So those two concerns you can kind of use to take off the table for the town of Hilton Head Island, in my opinion.
It's nice that we can't waive a fee without replacing the money.
Sure.
So, Eric, just a quick for clarification. So, with the three municipalities in the southern part of the county, if one of those municipalities was not supportive of it, is that it? Or could it then move forward and just only collect in the ones that are supported and only redistribute where they are supported?
The more, so I'll answer the question this way. The quick answer is I don't really know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But But I will tell you this, it would seem to me that given what I've been told by the legal team that worked with our impact fee consultant, and based on what they told me, any jurisdiction does not sign in and agree to collect the impact fee for the schools could make it very difficult for us to continue with the adoption.
Okay.
So,
It's the annexation on steroids.
Are you all planning a referendum in 22? Is that what you're thinking?
We haven't done that part
Decided,
yet.
okay.
Yeah.
I heard you were thinking about it and I didn't know where you were in that process.
But I will tell you this, I've worked in jurisdictions that have school impact fees. And the argument that school impact fees slow down growth and stop growth and hinder growth and or some sort of backdoor tax is not true. It's not accurate. That's just emotional argument. In the area that I worked in York County, that's where we started the school impact fee. If anything, when the Fort Mill School District, there's 4 school districts in York County, when Fort Mill adopted the school impact fee, construction and growth, population growth in Fort Mill accelerated because the school district got that much better, that much faster, because there was a revenue source to pay for capital that they could leverage other funds for, and it freed up other money to go into operations from that tax base. So you can't use impact fees for operations, so I'll make sure that's clear, because I don't know who might be listening, so I had to be careful. But the impact fee that goes for capital improvements would free up more money in the general fund that could be reallocated to operations, if that makes sense.
What's the total amount of all the impact fees in the southern collected? Per household.
Per house, I'd have to look it up.
It seems to me it's like 10 or 15 or something.
No,
Yeah.
6 and 8.
6 and 8. It's the total library, roads, and everything.
No, I'm just talking about school.
No, I was taking everything.
Yeah, I'll have to look it
I
up.
think it's like 15 or
It's
something.
15. Yeah, so we're basing it on the square footage of the house, if you recall.
Yeah.
Because that helps with the affordable housing issue. So the larger the house, more fees are paid. Smaller the house, less fees are paid. That's one way we're dealing with the affordability test that we have to meet for the state statute on impact fees.
It does come back around and bite you on the school teachers, because the ability to buy a home.
Right.
Because that goes up to
Mhm.
into the mortgage
Yeah.
immediately.
Okay, so we understand about the impact
Yeah,
fees.
we
Thank you.
do. Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to piggyback on something you said, Eric, is they made a big point of that when the digital vice gave their presentation a year and a half ago, was that exactly what you said had happened in Fort Mill, instead of, there's people not wanting to go there because of the impact fee, not wanting to build their home there, quite the opposite, because they're going to have right away, building the infrastructure that's really needed and makes a big difference. And I think people sort of don't think of it that way.
The workforce aside, the people who are coming here right now don't care how much it costs. They don't.
Right.
They do not care.
All right, next on our agenda is the Labico Branch Library Headstart property, which is out there on our way in northern Beaufort County. And I guess one of our questions is what's been relayed to the district and the board is that the county's probably not really interested in buying that property. You've got a lovely library on there, the other option is I guess putting it on the market or leasing it somewhere or.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
Or you got some property south of the Broad you'd like to swap? Because we're going to need something down there.
Last I remember, there was discussion at council about whether we would have to have a new agreement or amend the old one, and we were told we needed to amend the old one, and I think we approved that. Or in the
And when
process.
was that?
What, Tony?
When was that?
In the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
I think we're talking the same piece of property.
Yeah, it's,
that's.
I don't know the details of that. I'll be glad
We can
to,
change and go back and visit whatever you want.
I'll be glad to look into that and
Okay.
find out where we stand on that. I mean, there is there might be an interest, I think our council, and I can't speak for all of council, but, instead of us paying leases for property and things like that, it would certainly be an interest to us to purchase property from my perspective, because again, you're going to eventually own it outright and have to stop paying. So I'll look into that and
Okay.
follow up with Dr. Rodriguez on our position on that.
Perfect. All right. Next is the security fee for Hilton Head Police Services. Why don't I let you speak about this, Dr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, Tanya and I will tackle that, but honestly, we had received a bill for security service for police services on Hilton Head. And as a school district, we already pay for police services through our SRO program that we receive, right? So we're already paying for police services, and then we're getting hit with I think it's $32,000. Yeah, $32,000 assessment fee for police services. So we had submitted an appeal through the process. The appeal was denied. We submitted a second appeal, and the second appeal was denied. And so we just wanted to discuss it because it feels like we're paying and then paying again, right? For police services. Anything else you want to add?
No, other than, I think the amount that we pay for SROs on the properties of our Hilton Head schools is about $150,000 a year. So we just felt like it was sort of duplicate payment for the same service. But we understand that there is certain language in the ordinance that included governmental units, and that would include schools, and that was the rationale for the denial of the appeal.
Right. There's unintended consequences to the uniform service fee for Hilton Head Island. In the past, we had an agreement, whether it was written or verbal or however it came for the last 37 years. Hilton Head Island paid for police services. Suddenly, Hilton Head Island decided that the amount of money they were paying was no longer acceptable to them, that they believed that they were already paying those services. We could not get them to put money in the budget for that. We had to go through an alternative route called the uniform service fees that has unintended consequences, and that you treat everybody the same way. If you are a commercial business, if you are a governmental entity, you still pay for police services. So we, the county that has property on Hilton Head Island, are paying ourselves for police services. It has nothing to do with the SRO. The SRO program is a separate program. It is a school resource officer program, separate and apart. So unfortunately, there's nothing we can do at this point in time till we legally hash this out and have a conclusion to this. So, we do apologize, but those are the unintended consequences that we have, and nothing we can do at this point in time till the court finally settles this.
And there is one thing that you all can do in my mind is you all, when you're talking to Hilton Head about the impact fee, is saying, hey, you all probably ought to work out this sheriff's deal with the county so that we can get rid of the user fee, because that's having a negative impact on us.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to make something perfectly clear to the public too, that these SROs are Beaufort County Sheriff's officers themselves.
Yeah.
And they have the powers and the duties of an officer. So they're not just there, counseling students or whatever. They have the ability to, enforce the law if necessary. And we pay 75% of their compensation. And what, the school's open, as we know, 180 days, and
Yeah.
and it's an 8-hour day roughly. So I mean, that doesn't make sense.
You could create a real argument here with what are the services that the police department or the county sheriff office is supposed to supply to the public, and that the schools are part of the public, and we'll pay the $32,000 fee, but we'll pull out the SROs and expect to have the services needed in the schools. I mean, that's the other argument in terms of this conversation. So it is a double fee. I don't know how you look at it, but if we're gonna pay for separate entities in terms of security, then we shouldn't get a fee for that same security. I mean, the other buildings that you alluded to in terms of the county owning, I'm sure you're not also paying for private security in those buildings
Well,
too. Sheriff.
Yeah, let me address that if you don't mind, if it's
Yeah, go
okay. So yeah, I certainly understand that argument, but a user fee, what we've had to do in the Town of Hilton Head Island, a user fee is set up to equitably spread the cost of providing that service throughout that area. It's just like the school impact fee, okay? You take everybody that has a house, you do calculations and things like that. So if somebody comes in and they build a house in a given area south of the Broad, like in my particular case, for personal reasons, I made a decision to homeschool our daughter. I had no use for the school, but had I built a house in Fort Mill School District, I would have paid the school impact fee, and I didn't use the school system at all, ever, and I continued to pay school property taxes. So the school resource officers are designed to provide a specific duty and purpose within that school. The Hilton Head Island user fee for the sheriff is to level the cost of providing police services across the Hilton Head Island area. And that's why it has to be shared equitably to everyone. And I believe, so to Chairman Passama's point earlier, you know, like the Boys and Girls Club of Hilton Head Island, they had to pay it. The county, I'm trying to confirm that, we would have had to pay a user fee. Town of Hilton Head Island, for their properties, would have had to pay a user fee, because that's just the way it's set up, and that's the way the formula has to work in order for
The
it to be
chamber is
equitable.
screaming because their chamber members, like Shelter Cove, is shelling out $67,000, which is a lot more than they paid for when they were paying it through the property taxes. So it's a problem, and we hope to resolve it soon.
All the nonprofits, churches, everybody got caught in it. What I'm hoping will happen if first of all, we hope we have it adjudicated in court, and then we can do whatever the court says. But failing that, what I've suggested, I don't know anybody disagree with it yet, is that if it is uncertain as to how much Hilton Head's going to pay, we still ought to go back to letting Hilton Head collect it in their millage and making a payment to us, just like we did it before. And then the only issue there really is how big is it, which the court has set. So I'm hoping this was a one-time shot that we've gone through.
We're continuing to work through that, and hope that we can have some relief in the next few months for everyone in that situation.
Yep.
It's not something we wanted to do, but obviously we can't afford $3.5 million shortfall in a sheriff's budget. So we had to do something.
It's actually $4.5 million.
Well, it's $4.5 million, sir, but it was $3.5 million at the time they quit paying.
And the rest of Hilton Head paid twice. I paid twice.
Just to add to that, in our budget, we've added contract resource officers to all our elementary schools that are not covered by the sheriff's department or police department.
Mhm.
So just make sure
It's unfortunate that we have to do that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so Sam argument, you can argue about that universal fee as much as you want, but is security or not? And how far does it stretch?
Yeah.
Because, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I interpret that basically it sounds like council will probably be reasonably receptive to whatever you're doing within the current system. You can't speak for council. And I do think the fiscal autonomy is probably a discussion for another day.
Yep.
And you all ought to weigh in on the thought of, as the limited makes sense as the first bite of the apple, as opposed to going for the full thing, which Paul's point and my point may be a tough sell with legislative.
Didn't we bifurcate school impact fees from all the other impact fees? Didn't we make a motion to vote on that? So
We can vote on them separately.
I think we did. That's
We
what.
did,
We
we
did.
gave first reading to the school impact fee.
Right. So
But we didn't-
that's the one we need to put our shoulder to the wheel on right now.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody.
But that's holding up the other ones too.
And
isn't
I'm, well, I mean,
Yeah, it is.
they're holding, so because we have to have the intergovernmental agreements for the school and all the other ones, so
We do,
since
yeah.
the jurisdictions haven't given us the intergovernmental agreement for the school, they haven't given us the intergovernmental agreements for the other ones either, so well, I'm working on that every week, so to try to get that moved along, so.
It's big pushback from the home builders and some of those folks.
Yeah, and I think that's emotional because what up in, was it York County where it was $17,000, $18,000, more than double. what we're
17
talking
for
about.
single family, $12,000 for a multi-family. That's what they went up to last time. And that was appealed and they won that was appealed, they were sued in court. They won the first level and it's on appeal now, but probably won't even know.
It's a big long-term decision. They revolve around whenever you do a referendum. Because all these things tend to play in that final vote when those people willing to vote.
All right, I think we're adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Oh, you're welcome. Really appreciate hearing that.